Marvel, a company that has become synonymous with pop culture in that they release the biggest movie of the year every single year and have also produced the biggest, most successful movie of all time. However, Marvel's legacy actually dates back all the way to the 1960s and even before that when they were known as Tiny Comics. Marvel has produced iconic characters over the years, like Spiderman, one of the most popular superheroes in the history of the world, the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, the Avengers. One could say that it is a marvel that all of these characters could be produced under the banner of one company and become so successful and so intertwined in our American and worldwide pop culture. But I would say that legacy continues to this very day with these new, just as iconic, just as good, just as interesting, just as totally not dated characters that have been produced in this new Warriors line. Like Trailblazer, Be Positive, Screen Time, Snowflake, and Safe Space. Yes, that's right. Marvel has announced a new issue featuring a new version of the new Warriors, and these are literally the characters that they featured. And I've checked about 4 times to ensure that these characters are in fact real, and that this video was actually put forward by Marvel itself, and it is. Now, before I get into these characters, the state of Marvel overall, and the announcement video that was legitimately put out by Marvel Studios, and its 120 plus thousand dislikes to 1,000 likes at the time of me recording this video, I do want to take the time to thank everybody who jumped over and supported the Mythicist stream for the victims of the situation that we all as a country find ourselves under. I'm going to leave the link to the foundation where that went through, and what this foundation does is it basically helps people who are displaced by the crisis that we're going into. People who lost their jobs, people who might get sick. Go onto the foundation, check it out for yourself. I've actually donated my own money to this foundation, so I'd appreciate it if you would at least look it over, whether or not you can support it or not, and maybe get the word out to people who can support it. Now, with all that being said, let's get into this announcement video because it is truly fascinating that Marvel, the same company that had the vision to construct a cinematic universe with $200 million films that all fit together, actually puts forward characters like this in their comic book world when they're drawing so much on their comic book universe in order to build their cinematic universe.
My name is Daniel Kibblesmith, and I am the writer of New Warriors #1.
Now, as a general rule, in fact, a hard policy here at the Actual Justice Warrior, we do not comment on the appearance of our subjects in a negative way, because that's not the way I like to do business. However, I will point out that the author of these characters, the inventor of these characters, the person pushing these characters, looks exactly as you would expect him to look without even seeing the video. So for those of you who like to listen to YouTube in the way that I do, he looks exactly like you think he looks, 100% to a T. It's almost as if he's the character and Marvel's pulling a prank on us. The other thing that you'll notice while you're watching this is not only the fact that these characters in concept are all terrible, but they're drawn incredibly terribly, and they also look super similar. Like when they compare this to the 1990s New Warriors, which I have to admit is a comic book that I did not read because I don't read comic books, the characters look amazingly dynamic in comparison. I know that it's incredibly difficult to make money in the publication of comic books, but there are incredibly talented artists that would be happy to draw for Marvel, and it's one thing to have terrible characters, like characters with horrendous attributes, like this New Warriors team does in fact have, but the idea that you can't find someone to draw these characters in an interesting and dynamic way when artists literally grow up dreaming of the day that they will draw for Marvel Comics is an absolute travesty and is completely unforgivable. Even if these characters were interesting and compelling, these designs are horrible, and juxtaposing them against the older designs just highlights how terrible the art is. Now let's get into the characters.
Trailblazer. She's a group home and foster kid who is volunteering at a senior center, and she inherited from her grandfather a magic backpack of divine origin.
One of the things that you'll notice about these characters and the people behind these characters, the creative team, which is a term I use incredibly loosely to describe them, is that they have a complete and utter lack of self-awareness. The idea that you would, in a modern SJW comic book, name a character Trailblazer that inherited the thing that makes him a superhero from somebody else is absolutely stunning, because modern feminists, modern SJWs that think they're trailblazers are literally coasting off of the achievements of the past and refusing to acknowledge them. Also, if the bag is what's powerful and the bag was inherited by someone else, what makes this character unique? What makes them special? What makes them worthy of inheriting this prize? Now, we're going to get to the headline characters in just a little bit, but the reason I wanted to go through all of these characters is because they're all horrible, and they don't make a good cohesive unit. Like, they don't work well as a team. They're not well balanced. And a perfect example of a terrible character is screen time.
The word screen time is only ever used in a sort of restrictive sense. And because we're doing a story about teenage rebels, a lot of the names are about teens fighting against labels that are put on them. So
why would you want to reclaim the term screen time? This is like so weird and out of place. It's not even social justice related. The idea that you want to reclaim something that books tell you to monitor with your children and make that into a heroic figure makes no sense at all. It's literally the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
As a youth, he was exposed to his grandfather's experimental internet gas.
Yeah, you didn't mishear that. Screen time, a hero whose name is meant to reclaim the phrase screen time, for some reason, got his power from internet gas. Experimental internet gas. So his power is constantly being hooked up to the internet, so I guess that makes him Siri, except somehow way less interesting than Siri.
Snowflake and Safe Space are the twins, and their names are very similar to screen time. It's this idea that these are terms that get thrown around on the internet that they don't see as derogatory, to take those words and kind of wear them as badges of honor. Safe Space is kind of a big, burly, sort of stereotypical jock. He can create force fields, but he can only trigger them if he's protecting somebody else.
Yes, you heard that right. Marvel, a company that used to borrow inspiration from Norse mythology and all kinds of other sources, genuinely named a character after a phrase that people stopped saying in like 2015, 2016. And they did it to reclaim the phrase safe space, which is strange because safe space was originally a left-wing phrase. People were just making fun of them because they were demanding safe spaces from ideas. Now, his power set is not terrible on its own, but there is one hook in his power, one crippling weakness that makes him incredibly embarrassing. And that's that he cannot create force fields to protect himself, but he can only do so when he's protecting other people. So this guy in a one-on-one fight is basically useless. Also, for some reason, the writer behind this, the guy who's explaining these characters, thinks that this is the image of a typical jock. Now, when you understand that this, according to the writer, is what counts as a jock, you understand his earlier statement about how when he was getting into comic books as a kid, he didn't feel cool enough to read the New Warriors from the 90s.
He got interested in the New Warriors later. I remember seeing them on the shelf when I was a kid, picking up comics in the 90s and just feeling like they were too cool for me.
Now you have Snowflake, who creates snowflaked shaped shurikens, which again, on its own, being able to manifest weaponry to fling them at your opponents is not a terrible power, but of course Snowflake is the twin of Safe Space, and is a non-binary, and probably has some other LGBTQ characteristics that go along with that.
Snowflake is non-binary and goes by they, them. Snowflake has the power to generate individual crystallized snowflake-shaped shuriken.
And also, even though they're twins, making them siblings, this is how they decided to draw these characters together in this promotional video.
E negative is the goth kid. When he was a baby, he got a rogue life-saving blood transfusion, we assume from Michael Morbius. And now he has a very similar look and very similar vampire powers.
Now the final character in this new team called the New Warriors is a character known as B negative, who's essentially a Michael Morbius ripoff, except much, much worse of a character, and the exact character in this team that will eventually bring the whole team down, because this is the character that will make all the SJWs angry. Because if you think about it, and if you think about it in terms of woke terms, B negative is a horribly offensive name to give to a vampire-based character. You mean to tell me that Marvel didn't think about the stigma of HIV when they named their blood-drinking character B negative, as if being HIV positive is inherently wrong and makes those people worthless? Marvel is dehumanizing people who are HIV positive. I'm offended. All of the left will soon be offended once one of the lefties figures this out, or after you guys watch this video and start spreading the rumors that this is somehow offensive and stigmatizes people with that illness all over the internet to make Marvel apologize, which, by the way, they will apologize if you hype up this non-controversy that I'm literally just making up to point out that the fact that Marvel is appealing to these people will eventually be their undoing, because there is no way that you can successfully appeal to the circular firing squad that is the woke crowd, who, by the way, don't buy comic books anyway, so there's no point in appealing to them, without eventually that crowd churning on you. So yeah, this is the state of modern Marvel comic books. And before you say, Sean, Marvel always featured a very diverse and compelling team of characters. I agree with that, 100%. But the key word in there is characters. Marvel used to have characters that happened to be from diverse backgrounds. That's what made them interesting. Now Marvel has diversity quotas that aren't even characters. There's been nothing told to us that's interesting or compelling or tells us anything about these characters' personalities beyond generic, this is a goth kid, this kid volunteers at a place, this kid was exposed to internet gas. We've done better than internet gas, and we can do better than internet gas. But those are just my thoughts. I could always be wrong. Maybe B Negative will have his own wildly successful standalone movie someday. And if you think that, let me know in the comments down below. God bless you if you actually think that. If you like this video, then please show me by leaving a like. You can subscribe for more content. Follow me on all my social medias. They're linked in the description box below. If you want to support me, the links are all there too. Till next time.